The Monetary Authority of Singapore granted the CNA team access to a vault that has never been filmed for broadcast, but on the condition that we sign an undertaking to keep the location secret and leave behind all devices with GPS tracking. We offered to take this additional measure, just so we don't unintentionally find out where our reserves are kept. And off we go. In this episode, we're trying to find out exactly what's in Singapore's reserves, and hopefully answer the question, just how much is in Singapore's reserves? But to do that, we have to trawl through the spreadsheets of every entity linked to the reserves. That's like trying to read an epic novel and starting from the last page. No wonder most Singaporeans give up trying to understand what makes up the reserves. So what if we could just rewind to the basics? To start, just like a regular person, a country needs to buy things with money.
All countries will have cash to pay for imports, for example, whether it's imports of food, fuel and medicine. And some countries may have taken loans, international loans, and they need to make repayments as well.
But when you're buying and selling with countries around the world, you'd need all kinds of major foreign currencies.
I think the bulk of it should be the US dollar, because this is very commonly used to settle international trade. And of course, other major currencies as well. For example, the euro, Japanese yen, Chinese yuan, or the British pound.
That's why you often see the term foreign reserves when the news refers to a country's reserves. And that's the first, most basic part of Singapore's reserves, the Official Foreign Reserves, or OFR, which is managed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, or MAS, also known as Singapore Central Bank. Now, besides foreign currency, there is something else on MAS's balance sheet that is also part of our official foreign reserves. Remember that super secretive trip we took at the start of this show? Here's where we were brought to. This vault belongs to the Singapore government, and no media outlet has ever been granted access before. That's because it contains part of Singapore's reserves, and the authorities wanted the location kept secret. Each tray you see holds up to 20 gold bars, and each bar is worth close to 800,000 US dollars. And this vault, the size of which we can't disclose, is filled with these trays. This is just some of the gold Singapore has accumulated since the nation first bought gold in 1968. Now, this guy doesn't work for the government, but as an outsider, he's very interested in tracking the gold that Singapore owns.
I'm very interested in Singapore's gold reserves, and not just Singapore, of course. The largest purchasers of gold are central banks and governments all across the world. So it's important to track what the largest players in the market are doing. So MAS publishes a monthly report. If you look up the section Official Reserve Assets, you'll find a line for gold.
As of mid-2023, that's around 7 million fine troy ounces, which is equivalent to 222 tons of gold. How much is that? Luke's team is going to help us visualize it, using their gold, of course. After 3 hours, the team finally stacked up 1 ton of gold. What? That's it?
Now, I know this doesn't look like much. We get that a lot from first-time buyers. That's it. That's 1 kilo of gold. But if you think about it, it's because gold is very dense. And something like that could buy you a second-hand car in Singapore. And over here, we have the 400-ounce gold bar.
And this would comfortably buy 2 5-room HDB flats here in Singapore.
Now, imagine this stack multiplied by 222. That's how much Singapore's central bank is holding. Gold worth at least $10 billion as of mid-2023.
Gold's true value really shines during times of uncertainty and times of crisis. During times of crisis, the value of the other reserve assets will tend to fall. Gold has been tested across centuries, across thousands of years, and has still proven to be a good store of value. Singapore bought its first 100 tons of gold at $40 per ounce. The price today is close to $2,000 per ounce.
That's why gold is often held by investors as a form of protection against adverse market conditions. But all this gold is just a tiny portion of Singapore's reserves. In fact, most of the reserves are not even in gold. Because like most investors who would look beyond gold if they really want to make big bucks, Singapore does too.
Singapore is not unlike a successful businessman who has started to accumulate some savings, and after a while he would think about how to grow these savings rather than just leave it in cash.
So, for a country to get really rich, you need professional money growers like Charmaine.
In the last 11 years, I have been quite successful in not telling anyone how much I manage at the GIC. When I do mention how much I manage, they will normally say, wait, was that in millions or billions? And I will just sort of smile, and I am an investor who is constantly on the hunt for good and hopefully very good investments that we can own for the long term.
Singapore wants to buy and own investments that have a chance to really grow in value over time. There's a reason why we're showing you pizzas in a show about the reserves. Because this is part of it. This is from Shakey's Pizza, a mega pizza chain that is doing well in the Philippines. Companies like Shakey's can slice itself into smaller shares. Through GIC, Singapore has bought a number of shares in the company that runs this pizza chain in the Philippines. When the pizza company makes profits, GIC will get a portion of it as well. And if the pizza company grows, the worth of GIC's share would grow too, which GIC can keep for further growth or sell for a profit. All the proceeds go towards Singapore's reserves. So, what other companies has Singapore invested in with the help of GIC that also form part of the reserves? Starbucks. But not the one in Singapore.
I told my mom I was going to Starbucks, but I didn't tell her which one.
이번 역은 강남.
Singapore, through GIC, has a 32.5% stake in the Korean franchise chain of Starbucks. Hop over to Europe. Singapore also invests in the Sani Ecos Group, which runs luxury resorts in the Mediterranean. And this might surprise you. Singapore invests in Ancestry, a company based in the US that produces DNA testing kits. But why invest in all these companies that are so far away from Singapore?
Like any good investor, we try not to put all eggs in one basket, and therefore we have investments all over the world. So for example, if there's a downturn specific to Asia, maybe the investments in Europe and North America may still be doing well.
I work for all Singaporeans because if GIC is able to deliver our goal of good, long-term real returns that are inflation-proof, we are able to deliver this surplus that will benefit all Singaporeans in the future. I do actually tell people I work for all Singaporeans.
How do people respond when you tell them that?
Oh, they're like, yes, that's very good. I like that you're working for me.
Besides the GIC, of course, we also have the Temasek Holdings, which holds stakes in many big companies in Singapore as well as in companies abroad as well.
Temasek was founded in 1974 to take over ownership of 35 companies that originally belonged to the government. Some names you might know: Singapore Telephone Board, now Singtel.
Call waiting, another lifestyle service from Singapore Telecom.
Sal, have you seen Mum?
Singapore Airlines, DBS Bank. These companies have since grown into multi-billion-dollar enterprises. You can think of these Temasek portfolio companies like pizzas. They can be sliced up into shares too. Temasek used to own 100% of the shares. But in order to generate capital, some of these Temasek portfolio companies are publicly listed. That means Temasek has sold part of its shares on the stock exchange. Temasek can take some of what is earned from these shares to invest in more shares, but this time into companies around the world. Yes, that's Roblox right there. You may notice investments across different countries and industries. It's Temasek's way of diversifying what they own. GIC diversifies too, by investing in different types of assets other than shares of companies. So, GIC buys bonds, a sort of loan to a company or country which generates a percentage interest. GIC also invests in real estate. These assets can appreciate in value, generate an income, or do both. All of the proceeds go to Singapore's reserves. Since GIC's mandate is to invest outside of Singapore, we called upon these Singaporeans, all living abroad, and gave them a task. They have to locate a building in their cities in which GIC owns a stake.
Walking towards Emporium. It's right opposite the Melbourne Central train station, making it very easy to get through.
As you can see, it is quite busy for a Friday afternoon here in Melbourne.
Right behind me here is the Aja Center, invested by Singapore itself. And here the location is extremely good as well. You can even see the Oriental Pearl Tower.
So I've been to Paddington Station many times to catch the train, but I've never actually been to this place, which is called Paddington Central.
So as you can see, the building behind me is actually Gangnam Finance Center. It's actually one of Seoul's largest buildings, and it's 204 meters tall. The building is really massive compared to the other buildings around it.
I actually wasn't aware that Broadgate London was partially owned or invested in by Singapore.
We only showed 5 here, but Singapore, through GIC, has invested in properties in over 30 cities.
Singapore's reserves actually comprise not just financial assets, stocks, bonds, as well as property or real estate in different countries around the world. The financial assets that we are talking about do not include some of the physical assets in Singapore, the land and buildings as well, which also are part of the reserves.
Black and white bungalows, disused schools, shop houses, Old Kallang Airport, the Gilman Barracks and Dempsey. When I go out with my friends, I also try to bring them to our state property to dine, so that they actually can appreciate what I do and how these state properties are now transformed into a lifestyle, a destination for everyone to enjoy.
Carrie is from Singapore Land Authority, which manages 2,700 state properties and 11,000 hectares of state land. FYI, 11,000 hectares is about 15% of Singapore's total land size. So this former secondary school is also part of Singapore's reserves. It's now an urban farm. So, is everything government-linked part of the reserves? Like this, a national landmark, the National Stadium. Or this, a 14th century armlet from Singapore's national collection. How about this, the National Compulsory Retirement Savings Scheme, CPF money of every working adult in Singapore.
I've just brought out my own printout of the Constitution of the Republic of Singapore.
If you wonder why this guy walks around with the Singapore Constitution in his bag, well, he teaches constitutional law at NUS Law School. But what has a lawyer got to do with the nation's wealth?
Our constitution is rather unusual in the sense that most other constitutions around the world, nobody actually tries to define what reserves are. And for good reason, right? Because most governments actually like to keep the idea fluid because that gives them much flexibility. But if something is inserted into the constitution and you wish to change it, whether you want to change its definition or if you want to simply take it away altogether, then you need to go through the constitution amendment process. So by putting the meaning of the reserves into the constitution, the idea is to safeguard it from anyone wanting to tamper with the reserves.
So what's being protected? It's written here in Singapore Constitution, Article 2. Not the whole page, just this little bit over here. It doesn't list every item in the reserves, but only the entities that deal with Singapore's reserves. The government, statutory boards, and government-linked companies. Flip to the back. Here, the 5th schedule. It's a list of exactly which statutory boards and government companies are involved in Singapore's reserves. You will see some familiar names we've mentioned this episode. There are some deletions. This one here used to be MND Holdings Private Limited, which was deleted in 2016 because it ceased to exist. And this used to be the Board of Commissioners of Currency Singapore and got removed when it merged with MAS. Why is HDB and JTC on the list? They manage land in Singapore, so any moves made by these two statutory boards could affect the value of land, which in turn affects the value of reserves. Finally, you will see the CPF board in that list as well. How is CPF money connected to the reserves? For the money that Singaporeans put into their CPF account, they are promised interest. And that is guaranteed by the government, with the backing of the full wealth of Singapore's reserves. The fear is an irresponsible government could squander away the reserves and fail to deliver on that guarantee. The CPF board is part of the 5th schedule, so it's protected. Now, what about the National Stadium and the gold armlet from the National Collection? They are not part of the reserves. This is because Sports Singapore and the National Heritage Board, their respective owners, are not listed under the 5th schedule. So, here's the $1 million, no, probably billion, maybe even $1 trillion question. Just how much is in Singapore's reserves?
When you have assets as much as ours, investments as varied and diverse as ours, it's a moving target. This is an accounting nightmare.
If I had to tell you our asset base on national TV, I would be in trouble.
I don't know if it's 1.3 trillion, 1.2, I mean, what the difference? Oh, come on, it's all over the internet.
Strictly speaking, the size of Singapore's reserves is a secret. Or is it?
The reserves are not as secret as some people may think they are. So the financial reserves...
This means financial assets from cash to bonds to real estate to shares in companies.
So the financial reserves are managed by three entities: the Monetary Authority of Singapore, GIC, as well as Temasek Holdings. In fact, I can check what is the amount that MES manages as well as the portfolio value of Temasek Holdings. Let me take a look. As at 31st March this year, the official foreign reserves managed by MES were 416 billion Singapore dollars, while Temasek's portfolio value was $382 billion. So these are two of the three major components of financial reserves, which are already publicly disclosed. It's just that one component, the amount managed by GIC, is not fully disclosed. All the government has said is that GIC manages well in excess of $100 billion. And the reason for that is understandable to deter speculative attacks against Singapore's currency.
Wait, how do you even attack a currency? Speculators can manipulate this exchange rate by using their funds to flood the market with your currency, causing your currency to be worth less. But you can also defend yourself by buying back these dollars and basically neutralizing the efforts of these speculators. And that's where you'd have to use your wealth. That's right, all the reserves we talked about. All that wealth is really Singapore's war chest. And if you let everybody know exactly how much you have, even if it's a huge number, it's a bit like telling the world exactly what you have in your arsenal. And as long as an enemy has more than you, they know it's safe to pick a fight with you. So, exactly how much does Singapore have? We can't tell you, but it's enough to keep the Singapore currency safe.